All right. Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to look at factoring special trinomials. So it's 3.8, it's outcome A5, it's factoring. It's a continuation of what we did yesterday. So yesterday we did decomposition, right? Now, today what we're going to do is, well, we're going to factor these guys, but we're going to notice that there's something special about all of the questions that we're going to look at today. So in this one, if we look at 36x squared, what can you tell me about what kind of number that is? So what kind of number is 36? It's a perfect square. And then what kind of number is 1? It's also perfect square. So if I were to take this, and we know that the answer is going to look like 2 brackets, right? So we're going to set up our 2 brackets. So for this, basically, we're going to guess and we're going to check. That's what we're going to do. So what's the square root of 36x squared? The square root of 36 is 6, and then x. And what's the square root? So then we put that here, and we put that right here. Okay? Now, what's the square root of 1? 1. So I put a 1 here, and I put a 1 here. Now, what can you tell me about this sign? This is a positive. So what are all the ways that I could multiply 2 numbers together and get a positive? I could either have a positive and a positive, and that equals positive, or I could have a negative and a negative, and that will equal positive. So I need to decide which situation best fits this question. So here, I know they both have to be the same because I end up with a positive, right? And now over here, I'm going to look here, and this is what's going to tell me. This is going to be the defining moment of this question. So in order to get a plus 12, the only way I can do that is to have both of these being positive. All right? So now let's do a quick verification and see if multiplying this through is going to give me back to my question. So all you do is multiply it back out, and this times this is 36x squared. This is plus 6x. This is plus 6x. Whoop, sorry. And this is plus 1. So what do these two guys add up to be? So do I end up back at my question? Yeah. So if you could recognize this question, if you could recognize when they are perfect square trinomials, I'm going to call this a perfect square trinomials because I can rewrite this as, rewrite this. See, notice how this is exactly the same as this? I can rewrite this as 6x plus 1 all squared. Okay? So in your answer, you could either give me this, or you could give me this. I will accept both. Okay? Okay, so let's have a look at the next one. So let's look at part B. Part B says 16 minus 56x plus 49x squared. All right, so let's set it up so that we have 2 brackets. And what can you tell me is the square root of 16? 4. Okay, so I'm going to put a 4 here and a 4 here. What can you tell me is the square root of 49x squared? 7x and a 7x. All right. Now, we need to discuss the signs. So what's happening with the signs? I need to either put a positive or a negative here, right? I have a positive here, which means that they both have to be the same sign. Which one are they going to be? Are they both going to be positive or both going to be negative? Why do you think they're both going to be negative? Right, they need to add up to negative 56. So let's do our check. Let's just do our check right here. So what are these two multiplied together? 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times negative 7 is negative 28x. Negative 7x times 4 is negative 28x. negative 7x times negative 7x is plus 49x squared. Okay? Now, if you really like decomposition, and if you are unable to recognize perfect square trinomials, then decomposition will work just fine on here, okay? If you don't want to use this shortcut, that's fine, but it does save you time. Okay. So let's have a look at the next two questions. So these are slightly different. What do you notice is the difference with these two questions that are here? There's more variables, right? There's more letters. So we have to look at how this is going to end up being set up. So I'm still going to end up with my two brackets, right? But what's going to happen? It's going to look like something C and then something D, bracket, something C, something D. What kind of signs am I going to have in the middle here? What do you think? Why do you think negative and negative? Okay, because this is a positive, so they both have to be the same. And then you have a negative here, so that's what tells you. Okay, excuse me. Okay, so now we have to decide what the numbers are. Now, do you guys want to guess, or do you want to just use decomposition? Decomposition? Okay, if you were to guess, how many different options would you have here? You would have 1 and 5 here, right? And then you would have either 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. And then you would just place them here, and you would just run through it, okay? So let's use, you guys want to use decomposition? Let's do that. Okay, so what's the first step of decomposition? So multiply the 5 and the 6, and what do you end up getting? 30. What are the factors of 30? 2, well, 3 and 10. 4 and anything? 5? And then I'm done, right? So which of these combinations is going to give me minus 13? So it looks like it might be here, right? So are you thinking that it could be positive 2 and negative 15? But they have to multiply together and be a positive, right? So then we can't use this, can we? No. So the signs of each have to be exactly the same. So I'm going to have to use the negative 3 and the negative 10. That's my only option. All right? Do you see how initially it could seem like there are more than one choices, but when you look at the signs and what they have to be, my only option is, so then I'm going to break this up to 5c squared minus 3cd minus 10cd plus 6d squared. And now what's common? Notice I'm putting brackets underneath because I'm grouping them underneath. And I want to look at what's common amongst those two and then what's common amongst those two. So now I'm going to put a bracket around. What's a common factor among these two terms? Just to see what's left inside once I factor that c out. C minus 3d. Oh, sorry, forgot my 5. Thank you. 5c minus 3d. Okay. And now over here, what do I have to put down here? Put your minus, right? Because it's this sign that goes right there. And now what am I going to factor out of these two? 2D? So then I've got my minus 2D there. Now if I divide this term, the negative 10CD, by negative 2D, what do I end up getting? Oh, so I'm off to a good start already, hey? Because those two are the same. And now 6D squared divided by negative 2D. Negative 3D. Okay, perfect, right? How do I know I'm so far so good? Because these brackets are exactly the same. Now, if I were to factor this bracket out, that's my first bracket. And then what's my second bracket? C minus 2D. Okay. There's your answer. All right, so I'm going to leave you to verify this question. And why don't we take a couple of minutes? I'll hit pause and let you guys try this question, okay? All right. So let's have a look at this question now. Okay. So we're going to have, it's going to end up looking like something P, Q, something Q, something P, and something Q, right? Now let's decide, let's first see if we can decide right now what the signs are going to end up looking like. You have a negative here, so what's the only way to multiply two numbers together and get a negative number? One has to be positive, one has to be negative, okay? And that's the only way, and that's another way that we're going to get this negative 5 in here. So let's look at what the first step of our decomposition is, and really if you can guess through this, then that's great because you only have two options. Actually, do you want to guess through this one? Let's guess through it, okay? You've probably done decomposition, that's great. You can see me kind of guess through it. So your eraser comes in handy when you're doing this. So it's going to be P, Q, P, and Q, right? And I'm going to have a number here. It has to multiply to give me 3. What are my options? What two numbers are going to multiply to give me 3? Either 1 and 3. Okay, so I'm going to put a 1 here, and I'm going to put a 3 here. All right. Now, what are my numbers that are going to give me 2? 1 and 2? Okay, this is where you have to kind of guess and check. All right, so either I'm going to have a 2 here and a 1 here, or a 1 here and a 2 here. So I need to check which one is going to work. So if I have a 2 here in front of the Q, then I'm going to go 2 times 3. What does that give me? That's 6, so that gives me 6PQ. And then and then if I have a 2 here, then I have a 1 here. If I take these two and multiply them together, what do I end up getting? A 1PQ. Okay? So which, one of them has to be positive, one of them has to be negative in order for this to be satisfied. How am I going to make this 6 negative? This has to be negative? So let's try that. So let's see if this verifies and this works. 1 times 3 is 3PQ. Sorry, P squared. Those are both P's. Okay, this times this, and then this times this is 1PQ, a positive, right? And then this times this is negative 6PQ. And then this times this is minus 2q squared. What does this equal here? Minus 5pq? Does that fit my question? It does. Great. So if you're guessing, then that's kind of what it looks like. All right? There's different methods. There's people that are way better than guessing than I am. Did you use decomposition and you got the same answer? Then awesome. Perfect. Okay? Good job. Okay. So let's have a look at these factoring questions now. What do you notice about these as compared to the ones that we were doing just in question number 1? So there are perfect squares again. What's missing? The middle number. What's happened to the middle number? It disappeared, or what value does it actually have? If it's non-existent, then it is 0. Okay? So how do I get a 0? I'm adding two numbers together to get a 0. What two numbers could I have added together to get 0? So you're thinking 1 and -1, right? So what's more important about those two numbers than the value is the fact that one's positive and one's negative. They're exact opposites of each other, right? So that's why we end up getting a 0 and the middle term disappears. So what we call this type of question is we call these a difference of squares. Why do we call this a difference of squares? We have a square here and a square here, and what do we have in the middle? What's the sign that I'm pointing at? A negative. What is another word for minus or negative? Difference. Okay? All right. So let's look at this question here. Minus 49. So what is the answer going to end up looking like? Well, you're going to have two brackets. Any wild guesses, folks? 9m, 9m, and then a 7 and a 7. And then what do the signs have to do that are in the middle? Be opposite of each other. Yeah, so one's a plus and one's a minus. And there you go. You factored it. Done. That's all. Well, we're not ignoring the 0. Let's verify this, okay? Let's verify this and see what happens. What's 9m times 9m? 81m squared. What is 9m times 7? 63m. This times this is positive. And then this is, what's happened here? Yeah, so that's a 0. 81m squared plus 0m minus 49, which is exactly the same as the question that's given above, right? When there's a 0m, you just ignore it. You don't write it down because it just looks awkward. Okay? Okay. Let's try B. Okay, so this has a little more happening with the variables. But there's also something happening with these two numbers. They have a common factor of 2. So how would I take out the common factor of 2? Divide both by 2. Okay, so what is 162 divided by 2? 81. 81 v to the power 4, and then minus 1w to the 4. Okay. What kind of number is 81? It's a perfect square. Okay, so let's see if the difference of squares works on it. Remember to write down your 2 out in front. Don't lose it. I'm going to have 2 brackets now, right? Okay, so 9v. What's the square root of v to the 4? V to the 2, so v squared. So 9v squared, 9v squared. What's the square root of w to the 4? W squared, w squared. Okay, what about the signs here? One has to be positive and the other has to be negative. Okay, are we done? No. Why do you think we're not done? Okay, this last bracket right here, this is still a difference of squares factoring question. So we have to keep factoring it. Okay? So this has a plus, so we can't do anything anymore. There's no way that I can factor this first bracket out. So I'm going to rewrite these first 2 out. Okay? And now I need to break this second bracket up again. So, what's a square root of 9? It's going to be 3v. So I have a 3v here and a 3v there. What's the square root of this w guy? W, w. What can you tell me I have to have with signs here? One has to be plus, one has to be minus. Okay. Now, there is no more that I can factor. All right, now it's completely factored. So you have to make sure when you're factoring these guys is that they're all completely done. Okay? All right. So now I've got these 4 questions for you. I'd like you guys to try them now, and then we're going to correct them together. Okay? And then there's homework at the bottom of the page.